Hello, legendary listeners, and welcome to the Legendary Ladies podcast, hosted by Amy, Kat, and Morgan, where we have entertaining and thoughtful conversations about media and pop culture. This week, if you've been listening to our last few episodes, you'll know we had a trivia night. You'll know that I, Amy, lost abysmally. And I lost pretty impressively when it came to a category I probably should have known more about. Spider-Man. I got none of them right. Big old goose egg. Morgan got a couple of them right. It was Kat's category. And so we've decided, with all of the Spider-Man stuff that's coming up, and the fact that I was so bad at it, we're going to have a Spider-Man 101 lesson with Kat. And Morgan and I are going to ask Professor Kat questions, and she is going to answer it, and hopefully I will learn about Spider-Man, because apparently I didn't even know where he was from. What did I say? That he was from Manhattan, which is, I thought Manhattan was part of the Bronx, I think.
No. Yeah, you definitely did not know the New York layout. I will say
that was also the problem.
That was something that happened during that question.
So I think we're just gonna dive right in. So first off, Kat, since you are a professor, I think you are obligated, like at the start of a class, you have to stand up and be like, "Hi, my name is Professor Kat. This is my expertise in the field.
Oh, okay.
So please explain thy expertise."
Guys have my name already, so there you go. But yeah, I've been a Spider-Man fan all my life since the first movie came out, 2002. I was in second grade. I was like, I like that guy. I want to learn more. So I went on eBay with my dad. I would buy Spider-Man comics. And then around 2008, I want to say, I went on a trip to Universal, and I wanted like books to read on the plane. So I went to the comic book store and I found this character named Spider-Girl. I was like, who the hell is she? Like, whatever, I'll go get it. And then I read it and I fell in love. I was like, oh my God, I want to read all of her. And then I read every single issue of her I could, and that was all of them. And that made me become an even bigger Spider-Man fan. But yeah, since I would say 2007, I've been reading Spider-Man every week, or every 2 weeks, because that's when it comes out every month. So since issue 500, I would say I've been reading Spider-Man like on a weekly basis. I've obviously read past Spider-Man 2. And we're up to like issue 800, 900 now. So I've read a lot of Spider-Man. And he's my favorite character, favorite franchise. I've always loved him. There's different versions of him we'll talk about. But yeah, the movies really started that for me, the Tobey Maguire movies. And then throughout life, more movies came out. And then when Into the Spiderverse came out, I was like, finally, a movie that really showcases the comic. Because if you watch the Tobey Maguire movie, it's like, oh, yeah, this is a superhero movie. Less so than MCU. I think they do make it a little stronger as a comic book movie, because the MCU, I think, are more, action films and are not as based on the comics. But the Into the Spiderverse was the first movie where I was like, this is a comic book on screen, which is why I'm so excited for Across Spiderverse. It's so funny because I've been talking about it for months, this movie. Like, literally, I'm like, we have to see this premiere day. And we actually have to see it twice on premiere day. And all my friends are like, we'll go see it premiere day. We might even see it again premiere weekend. We're going to see it twice in one day. And I was like, okay. And then one of my friends' graduations the next day. And even though they're graduating the next day, I was like, yes, we'll go see the movie. Don't worry. I got
there you go.
Earlier. So that's how much they know how important this movie is to me. So what we wanted to do with this, like we said, we're going to talk about Spider-Man, and you guys are going to ask questions, but also, try to help you guys for the next movie and talk about which characters are there and what to expect.
Okay, so let's start with the bare basics. Let's start with who, what, where, when, why. So Who are the mains? Where does it mostly take place? When, I guess? You can pick however you want to answer the when. When did it start? I don't know. Who, what, where, when, why. I was like, I missed one.
Let's start with one.
Yeah. Who?
So which one you want us who?
Let's do who. Let's do basic main characters that every single person who goes to a Spider-Man trivia night better know, aka me. I am taking notes.
I'm also going to try focusing on the movie who's too. So since we're talking about the movie coming out, I'll talk about who's important in that. But who's important is obviously Peter Parker. He is Peter B. Parker. He is the main character. He is Spider-Man, and he was introduced in the 1960s. The first appearance was Amazing Fantasy issue 15, which I think was a might have been a question for the trivia night, because you guys were like, is there Spider-Man issue 1? And I was like, no, it's definitely a different comic. But he started out as a high school student, got bitten by a radioactive spider, and then he got superpowers. His little entourage there in the beginning was Harry Osborn, who's the son of his greatest villain, Green Goblin. That's and then you had some other characters in and out as well. Liz Allen is a supporting character you'll see every once in a while. She showed up in the college years, Spider-Man college years, actually kind of the longest period of Spider-Man. Him in high school wasn't as really? Long as you think. Yeah, like it was only a couple of years. Like if you look at the Spider-Man length, it's him in college lasted a couple of decades, and then him as an adult as we see him now.
So he gets bit in high school.
Yeah, he got bit in high school, like 15 years old. And then Uncle Ben dies, and you know, Spider-Man had the opportunity to get the person who killed him. I hope you guys know this portion of the story. And then he was too cocky. He didn't do it. So then he has the biggest regret. And Spider-Man's themes are that he has all the old Parker luck, means that nothing ever goes right for him. And then also with great power comes great responsibility. So he knows he has this power, and a lot of times it'll get in the way of maybe something that's happening in his life. Like maybe he wants to go to dinner with Mary Jane, who's his love interest, or he has to help Aunt May with the groceries. He's not going to do any of that because he's being Spider-Man, because he thinks he has to help all these people. But a big trend is that a lot of people die in Spider-Man's life. So we had obviously Ben that started all of that, but Gwen Stacy was another big death, which was a woman in refrigerator death, people call it, because she died for the sake of the male hero's story. Which really did happen. And then her dad has died in the comics. There's so many people that have died in the comics just to make Spider-Man a little bit sad. Flash Thompson died, came back to life. So that's kind of a big part of Peter's life as well. Other characters, there are main characters. I mentioned Flash Thompson. He was the school bully of Spider-Man, and then but also of Peter Parker. And then he's actually a huge Spider-Man fan. So he's like a Spider-Man fanboy, but hates Peter Parker. And then he ends up joining the military, becomes an amputee, and then he ends up becoming Venom, one of the fan favorite Venoms. And we can talk about villains of Spider-Man in a bit. But Mary Jane obviously is a big character. She is the love interest of Peter Parker. Not the original love interest, like I said. There's always this kind of play on a couple love interests he had. Gwen Stacy, she's dead. So, not much of a love interest anymore. But that was like his first love.
Professor Cat's like, so here's the thing. That was dead.
She's dead. She's real dead. Literally the arc that she dies in is called The Death of Gwen Stacy.
Is that the one with Aaron Garfield's?
Andrew Garfield? Yeah.
Andrew Garfield's, gosh.
Yeah. She dies, and it's a big moment. That's when Green Goblin kind of became his arch nemesis, was when we get to see he kidnaps Gwen Stacy and brings her onto the Brooklyn Bridge. And Spider-Man's like, I'll save you, because he throws her off the bridge. And then Spider-Man thinks, okay, I could use my web shooters, because a lot of people think he has organic webbing. He does not. He has web shooters that he creates to, actually save people with his webbing. But he breaks Gwen's neck by doing that because of the Force. So that's how she dies. It's even more of his responsibility and fault that she ended up dying. But yeah, Mary Jane's usually the main person who is the love interest. And the big thing about Spider-Man is that they can never be together. So in early 2000s, there was this big arc called One More Day. And Spider-Man and Peter were married for probably like 10 years since, and they're,
Spider-Man and MJ.
Oh, Spider-Man and MJ.
I'm very fond of Spider-Man and Peter, though. Like, that is a whole new story.
Spider-Man and Peter finally made it work.
Yeah, in another univer's. Spider-Man and MJ, they were married, and then something called One More Day happened, and there was an arc where their marriage just disappears because Aunt May was about to die, and Mary Jane's like, all right, let's make the deal with the devil, literally, and what we have to trade is our marriage, and we won't remember that we're married anymore. And ever since then, they've been playing a will they won't they get back together, and they tend not to.
I may have not traded anything else.
You would think.
We got this like really sick IKEA sofa. I think we can let that go for Aunt May. Like, why is their marriage like the first thing that what could we give up? Is it perhaps you?
Each other?
So is that where the most recent Doctor Strange, Everybody's Gonna Forget You storyline, is that where that developed in the Tom Holland verse?
For sure. I think they definitely were playing off of the One More Day stuff. And now what's going on in Spider-Man, I can't, maybe in the end of the class we'll talk about it, because what's going on is actually wild.
I don't dislike the Tom Holland Spider-Man. So
I meant the comics, not the movies. The comics are in a really interesting place. But yeah, so the Mary Jane's a character, and then Black Cat is the other love interest. She's kind of the Catwoman of Spider-Man, and she has powers. They're just lucky powers. So she's just really lucky a lot of the times. That's literally her superpower, is that she's lucky. So those are the love interests of Spider-Man. And I would say those are all the main players that aren't villains. Again, we could go into villains later, but let's go into the movie. So the movie, the main character is not Peter Parker. It's Miles Morales. And Miles... The Spiderverse cartoons. Those are what we're going to be focusing on, or because that's the next movie that's coming out.
So that is the subject of this 101 class.
Yes. So we're going to be talking about the animated films. Okay. So the animated films were Miles Morales is the main character, and he was introduced in like 2010-ish, around that time. And this is where things get a little confusing. Spider-Man in Marvel, in any comic, you guys know there's many universes, right? There's so many different universes that can collide. Spider-Man, there was this universe called Ultimate Spider-Man. And unlike DC kind of has universes that spin out and they last maybe like 5 issues. They're like, let's talk about Kingdom Come. Here's like a 5-issue story about it. And, May will show up again or whatever. Marvel tends to tell stories that are like 10 years old, where every month a new story will come out of this universe. So Ultimate Spider-Man came out in the early 2000s, which is honestly why a lot of people think that Peter is like still in high school in the comics, is because of this comic. He was still in high school, and they actually tell that story. But because it's an alternate universe, they could do anything they want. Mary Jane could be together with Peter. Gwen Stacy could come back to life. All these things could happen. And what did happen in this universe is the death of Spider-Man. Spider-Man died. Yeah, Spider-Man died. Yeah, Peter Parker died, and you're like, oh man. And he stayed dead. He stayed dead for the most part in that universe for a while. And they needed a new Spider-Man for that universe, and it ended up being Miles Morales, this new character. And Miles Morales has a somewhat similar narrative to Spider-Man, where something happens with his uncle, but this time his uncle's a bad guy. That's kind of the twist. And we saw this in the original Into the Spider-Verse, where his uncle's a bad guy, he dies, and that the same thing happens in the comics. So Miles in the comics ends up going back to the regular universe and is now playing around with Peter Parker that's in the regular universe, the 616 universe. So that's Miles. He is another Spider-Man, right? So that's how he came to be. So Spider-Gwen.
Is Miles now in the regular universe? Because I've definitely read a couple of things with him and Kamala, who is Miss Marvel, like at like a science fair or something. And I was like, wait, wasn't he in a different universe? And then I thought, Morgan, why do you question things?
He is in the regular universe. The Ultimate Universe doesn't exist anymore. It never happened. No. They erased it completely. But this summer, it's coming back. So that's
trade their marriage for it.
They traded not the end of the world. So they're like, hey, the only person that was able to really survive the Ultimate Universe was Miles. They're like, Miles was really successful from the Ultimate Universe, so let's just move him to the regular universe. But everything else in the Ultimate Universe is dead. Let's not talk about it.
That's rough. What about all of Miles's like friends and family? Are they all like
only his mom and dad and his best friend Gonke are still in the regular universe. They converted as well, but everyone else is done. They're not really there anymore.
That's tough for anyone who's not Miles Morales.
Yeah. Everyone else is like, well, I mean, a lot of them were copies. So like Kitty Pryde was in the Ultimate Universe, but we have a Kitty Pryde in this universe. So they're just like different versions of the characters that we already know.
Morgan, what Kat is saying is that doppelgangers don't matter. So that doppelganger that lives down the street from you, you two are going to have to duke it out at some point.
It's going to be a Highlander situation. It's me or her.
When the worlds collide, it'll be very important for you guys.
We're going to have to choose one of them to go to the main universe.
I think you might win. Yeah, I think you're going to win.
I'm scrappy.
And I think the other Morgan was a little older, right?
I mean, not that much older. She's not gonna like break a hip. She's around my
age. Oh no. Well, maybe this might be a fight. Hopefully she doesn't do karate on the side.
My hope is that you have trained Bunsen and Beaker well enough that they like go after her.
Like, boys,
we're gonna get a call. We're gonna get a call from the FBI, and they're like, "So we hear you've been making threats against a Morgan Glennon. You're sticking your cats on her and threatening to destroy her so you can go to another universe." Okay.
This woman doesn't even know I'm alive, but I'm going to get that slot for the universe.
But you know she's alive, and that's
she's
important.
alive.
And that's the important.
I'm sure she knows of you. But next up, let's talk about Spider-Gwen, because she's also another
I would love
big
that
character. So Spider-Gwen,
I love her character design. She looks really cool. And so I bought like the first Spider-Gwen, like the number 1 or number 0 or whatever it was, because I was so excited, because like, she looks awesome. And as I was reading, I was like, I am confused.
The thing is with Marvel Comics, they'll tend to have like a volume 1, but it's not actually volume 1. It's probably like the 3rd volume of that series. So that's probably why you were confused. But yes,
where to start.
Spider-Gwen, she was introduced in the first Spiderverse event. So Spiderverse, the movie, is based on a real comic. It's written by Dan Slott. It happened probably like 10 years ago. And all the Spider people got to meet each other. And they were fighting these villains. We don't have to go into too much detail about that. And then they were creating new Spider people to kind of gear up for this event. So there was something called Edge of Spiderverse. It was like a prelude to the Spiderverse. And they were just introducing new characters or even revisiting some old ones. Like Spider-Man Noir was a character from early 2000s. So they had other characters. But then one character that kind of piqued people's interest because of the costume was Spider-Gwen. We're like, who the hell is she? But no one knew it was going to be a big book. It was Edge of Spider-Verse issue 2. It'd be like, oh, that's kind of fun. Gwen's coming back. Gwen in the past has come back, but every single time they did it, it was really bad. She had a child with Norman Osborn. It was very, very bad. When that was a very, we won't touch that story as much, but this time she was from a new universe, and she got the powers of Spider-Man. And Spider-Man doesn't exist in her universe. Peter Parker was the Lizard, and he's the one who ends up dying. That's like her guilt that she carries, is that her best friend died because he wanted to be like her. He tries to do experiments on himself to be like a superhero. And then he ends up dying. So Gwen is in her early 20s, probably like college age, 18, 19. And she's part of a band, the Mary Janes, which, you might have heard that name before. And she's a drummer. She's, she likes it, but she is Spider-Man. She's Spider-Woman. She has other responsibilities she has to do. So instead of being with her friends, she's got to, fight Venom. And that's
ballet shoes.
In the movie she does, but in the comics it's
then
sneakers.
Who am I thinking of a spider person with ballet slippers?
She kind of has it in the movie. I could see where you're coming from with that. Okay. But yeah.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, so that's her character. She's in the movies as well. They, for the most part, stick to her narrative from the comics, but you don't dig too hard in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse of who she is. So I think this movie, they might actually go to her world, which is Earth 65. And yeah, for a while, we were the same thing I said about Ultimate Spider-Man. We actually had a monthly series with Spider-Gwen, lasted probably with both volumes like 50 issues, and we got to see her world. We got to see Gwen have her character again, because the original Gwen Stacy wasn't really much of a character. She really was just a love interest. She was just kind of there for the name. And then this version of her gave her a life outside of Peter Parker. She wasn't the woman in refrigerators anymore. She had a really cool costume, which, usually when you have a new Spider-Man, they're pretty similar to the costume that is Spider-Man. So it was really cool to see her have this white costume. It looked cool. And then she loses her powers in the mix of it all, and she gets her powers through a Venom symbiote. So she's one of the only Spider people that is able to kind of handle the Venom symbiote without becoming a villain. Because a lot of times the Venom will make you if you've watched Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire, you might not dance.
When he went bad, he was such a cool character.
Exactly. But yeah, a lot of times you'll get a little bit more aggressive. You become a little bit more evil when you're with the Venom.
Now you're talking about the Venom symbiote as if this is a thing that Amy and I know anything about.
Yes,
so let's talk about the Venom
Morgan.
symbiote.
But I saw the look of fear in Amy's eyes, and it reflected in mine as well. What could you explain what that is?
My notes are getting more and more. There's a lot of lines that are being connected.
There is. There's a web, you would even call it.
I'm creating. I've got a line of Gwen Stacy that goes back to MJ ? No, not the same. Not about. Like, I have. So. Who
MJ
is
and Gwen
Venom?
are two different characters.
Yes,
Yes. The Venom symbiote he's probably one of the biggest villains of Spider-Man. It's just an alien symbiote. I don't know how else to explain it. It's like a big goo
I thought it was just Tom Hardy.
Yes. Well, the alien symbiote's able to attach itself onto things like a parasite. So Tom Hardy's character is Eddie, and he's the original Venom. He's this photographer for the Daily Bugle, which is where Peter works. He's a photographer that takes pictures of himself. I know it's weird, but that's his job, and that's how he makes money.
I'm sorry, I'm cracking up at Meet the Pam's comment. Those of you who are Patreon members, you guys get a chance to join us live. And Pam on here, she's like, Amy just had that look like she was about to drop the class. I'll have you know, I love learning. I'm not going to drop the class. I'm going to ace this exam. That's why these notes are so intense.
You're going to go to my hours for sure. You're going to go to my
I am very excited about this.
Rachel in the chat said, Amy's like, I'm going to audit this one.
I am going to get the A. I always get the A when it comes. If I can study it, man, I'm going to learn it. So
and Meet the Pans, like I think some of these require 202. I agree. I didn't understand how much 101 they needed for Spider-Man. It's so interesting with Spider-Man because you think you know some basics because of the movies, and you guys have seen the movies. So it's so interesting.
Some of them.
I've read some of the comics. Like I read some of the Spider-Gwen stuff, but it was one of those things where I picked it up because I was like, that costume's sick as hell. And then I opened it up thinking it was going to be like more of like an intro to the character, and it just dropped me right in. It was just like, yeah, she's going to her band. And I was like, what band? I thought she was dead. Why is she alive? Is anyone going to explain why she's alive?
At least we got to that. We got to the part of why she's alive. Different universes.
Exactly. Different universe.
Strokes.
Yeah. But I was a little confused with the comic, although I do remember like it being very pretty to look at. Like the art was great, even though I was very out of my depth spider-wise.
Okay, and let's get back to Venom.
Get back to Venom. Can I confirm if I have been, I don't know, if I share the Venom symbiote, do I share it? Does it invade me? Does it ask to take over? Like the Venom symbiote
no, it just kind of
takes
over.
Does it politely ask?
It doesn't get consent. Yeah, it doesn't really get consent.
Does it have the ability to push my consciousness to the side and take over completely, or do I have some say?
You guys are talking. So there's another symbiote named Carnage. I would say he's someone who will kind of push the psyche to the side a little bit more. You are not in control when you have Carnage. He's like more bloodthirsty. He's more about murder. Venom is the light version of that, where the guy, Eddie Brock, he's still there and he's talking to the Venom, kind of like what the movie has done, where it's like, okay, like they're both sharing the body, but the Venom symbiote might give some bad advice. You should do this. And he's like, yeah, I guess I should do that. But maybe
the Venom's like a little bit like a devil on his shoulder, going like,
exactly,
he did something that isn't a good thing.
Exactly. And then over the years, he was purely a villain, but over the years now he's become like more anti-hero-ish, because I've told you Flash Thompson, the school bully, actually became Venom for a while because he was an amputee, and you got to see him.
A what?
Like an amputee, like he had like a missing leg.
Oh, I thought you said an MTT, and I was like,
oh no.
You know me?
So
yeah,
the Venom symbiote is an individual singular character. There are not multiple Venoms that then symbiotic.
Yeah, it's just one. Yeah,
it's not a race. It is the Venom is an individual.
Okay, interesting.
There are definitely other Venoms around, but like for the sake of 101, yes, he's just one.
So you said that Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen, is able to successfully coexist with this Venom symbiote.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, that's where we started. That was how this tangent got started.
Yeah, and then Venom again. He's kind of one of the biggest villains of Spider-Man, but now he kind of plays the anti-hero role. He's more of a hero, kind of like Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn started out as a villain, and now she's hero-ish, and then Venom is too.
So when he was a villain, who was his host?
Eddie Brock.
Who
Tom
is
Hardy.
the high school bully?
No, that's
No.
Flash Thompson. There's two Venoms.
Eddie Brock, Tom Hardy. Okay, gotcha.
Yes,
all I
Tom
keep seeing
Hardy.
is this one
Yeah.
Tom Hardy, Eddie Brock scene in a convenience store in my head.
I can see why.
Like, that was the trailer scene, and that's all I've seen of that movie.
Yeah, I was about to say, to be fair, Venom is where I kind of get out of my depth with Spider-Man stuff because I didn't
realize it was connected.
I've never gotten to any of that in any of his stories, and then I never watched the Venom movies, so I don't even have that like MCU basic knowledge of Venom. I'm just like, I just know it makes Tom Hardy kind of funny.
Yeah, and I would say they go a lighter version for the movie because again, at this point in the comics, he's not as much a villain. So, and the reason I was mentioning Flash Thompson is like that's the time where because he took over the Venom and he was more of a hero. Once Flash died, Eddie became Venom again, and they're like, maybe we should make him a hero too, and make him more of like an anti-hero, and that's why they went the route they did with Eddie. But they're again both anti-heroes, so he's one of the biggest villains. Green Goblin's one of the biggest villains for what I mentioned before. He killed Gwen Stacy. He tends to kill people. He tends not to be a good guy.
Uncool.
So we've done the Who heroes. Who are the main villains? Since we're on that topic, let's go there before we go to the what's.
I wanted to ask another question. How many people are in the Spider family? Because we talked about Peter, we talked about Miles, we talked about Gwen Stacy, but there's also Spider Woman, and then there's that other Spider Girl who's like mad all the time. Silk, yeah. I mean, it depends on who you ask. There's a lot. I think that's going to be something you see in Across the Spider-Verse. They're showing, I think they said 200. There's a lot of main ones. Spider Pig, yeah. Spider Pig's, yeah, he's someone who showed up at least 5 or 10 times in the comics. He had his own comic for a little while. But the people you're going to see more often in the comics, I would say, are Silk. So Silk is, and I don't know if she's going to show up in this movie. I know she has like a TV show coming up or something like that from Sony. So she's an interesting character. Silk was introduced in an arc called Spider Island, where everyone gets spider powers, including Mary Jane. And we find out that everyone makes a joke about this because they had sex so often. Mary Jane did not turn into a monster because she kind of already had some radioactive powers in her body. Oh my God.
So she ended up just becoming like a person with spider powers, but everybody else became like spider people.
Oh my God. She was like, listen, we doing it so much that I'm immune.
It's her version of the STD, the Spider-Man transmitted disease.
I cannot deal with that.
Oh, this is so funny. Meet the Pam says, this is serious class when both Kat and Amy have pens in their hands. No shade, Morgan. I'm just here for the jokes because it's some serious Spider-Verse education.
It is.
I like finishing with I like touching things when I do anything.
Fine.
There you go.
And now, are you happy?
But yes, going back to that. So in that arc, I think Silk was introduced around that time. So Silk is Cindy Moon. She also was bitten by the radioactive spider from the original radioactive spider. So like the same field trip. He definitely got around. And in this version, they're really sexually attracted to each other. So they can't go near each other or else they'll have sex with each other. But that only really lasts 1 or 2 issues and they kind of get over
those
it.
Sexy spider pheromones,
Spider-mones. Well, spiders Black Widows are famous for their pheromones, right? That's how they lure in prey, and apparently
they did that with Spider-Man. It didn't last long. People didn't really like it very much. So she ends up kind of having ends up not really even having adventures with Spider-Man very often, but she ends up becoming a journalist at the Daily Bugle, and that's kind of her story, is that she was in a bunker for 10 years and has PTSD because of it.
Why was she in a bunker?
They just kind of there's this person who caught her and say, oh, you have spider powers, you gotta stay in this bunker for 10 years, and that's her story. That's why we never saw her. They're like, she also got bitten by the spider, but she has to stay in a bunker for 10 years because why the hell hasn't she been around?
Oh,
I
my
see.
God.
So people are like, where has your cohort been? Oh, in a bunker.
Yeah, she was kidnapped by a villain.
Bellamy, probably.
Sure. Yeah.
No, I got you.
Thank you, Morgan.
I
Morgan's
followed
got
along
me
with that reference.
Okay, so wait, are we on the villains yet?
Not yet. We got to go through the heroes still, because Morgan asked the very important question of how many there are.
I'm sorry, I just needed to know that. So I read, and this was many years ago, there was a crossover with Spider-Woman when it was during the time when she was pregnant in the comics, and that's a great run, by the way. People, it's kind of accessible. Like you don't have to read a ton of other Spider stuff to get into that one.
And the reason is that Jessica Drew is not really too connected to Spider-Man most of the time. She's always like, she's more of an Avenger than she is a spider. I mean, she is a spider person, but she didn't get bit by a radioactive spider. Her parents were really bad to her and like did experiments on her as a child, and that's how she got powers.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she's just Spider-Woman by trade. She's not really that connected to Peter Parker. She really does tend to have her own adventures, but that is a great run. But that is why it's so unconnected to Spider-Man, because she really doesn't hang out with Spider-Man very often. I'm trying to think of who else is around. There's many Spider-Womans though. That's 302. Yeah, there's
302. Oh my gosh, that's upper level division class right there.
Yeah, I don't know if I could go into all that.
I'm sweating.
There is more Spider.
I was like, listen, I know stuff. I read that one run, and she met Silk, and she met Spider-Gwen, and they had like adventures.
They did.
And it was great. And I was like, so I know all about the Spider family. And then you're like, wait, there's been like 25 Spider-Women. I'm like, never mind. I like my pen goes down slowly. I'm like, never mind.
You're like, oh, I'm not gonna come to that.
Gotta start writing.
I'm gonna skip that. Those are kind of some big ones. I'm trying to think if there's any other Spider people you really gotta know about. But maybe you'll ask a question. I'll be like, yeah, that's Spiderverse.
Let's go to villains. To the villains.
Okay, so Venom, we talked about.
Okay.
In length. We talked about Green Goblin. Who else is a Doctor? Yeah, he's a big villain. You know, here we go. Here's some more master level class. Green Goblin was gone for a little while because they overused him a lot. So they're like, which villain should we like use next? You're like, Dr. Octopus could be kind of fun. He's a scientist. He's got tentacles as his weapon. That's kind of what he does, right? That's his thing, and he's also a little narcissistic. That's his thing. In the regular Spider-Man universe, Spider-Man does die, right? This is not the Ultimate Universe. I know you're getting confused. Ultimate Universe, he dies too, but that was more permanent. This one, he dies, but guess what? Dr. Octopus switches his mind with Peter Parker and becomes Spider-Man. And they call him Superior Spider-Man because he's narcissistic. So he also becomes
funny
like
that you
kind
mentioned
of
that, because Rachel just mentioned this in the comments. She said, I started reading Superior Spider-Man, which has Doc Ock taking over Peter's body. So
yeah, and it's like for a whole year, his name's Superior Spider-Man, and he becomes Spider-Man for a little while. So he's a villain.
So does the OG Friday
Peter come back?
He does after a while.
Okay. I've got some.
He's not Freaky Friday. His brain actually like goes into his head.
What? Okay.
Like his brain goes into. Yeah, comics are interesting.
So
he literally takes his brain and implants it into Spider-Man's head.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so continue, or Morgan. Continue with the line of questioning.
I'm trying to think of what other villains you. Yeah, I don't. Okay, I'm trying to think if there's any more villains you want to know about, but those are like the core. Those are big villains that you're gonna. Oh, I mean, Spider-Man 2009's that should be the villain of this new movie, because he looks like he's gonna be evil.
Say again.
Yeah, Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. There's Spider-Man 2009. There's a character. He's in the trailers of this new movie. 99. Because he's from the year 2099.
Okay, so there's a Spider-Man 2099. And he is going to be the villain, theoretically, in the new Spiderverse movie.
In the comics, he's not a villain. He's just a Spider-Man from the future, and his name's Miguel O'Hara. But in the movie, it looks like he might be a little more villainous. We don't know, but that's
what does he do in the comics besides like hang out in
Just hang out in the future. I will also be blunt. I don't like Spider-Man 2099 that much. So I haven't read that many of his comics. I could go into detail, but I can't because I don't know much about him. I just know he's a Spider-Man from Spider-Man 2009.
Apparently played by Oscar Isaac. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, he is going to be one of the main characters of that movie. We should talk about Mayday. We should talk about Mayday because she's actually going to be in this movie. Mayday's my favorite hero. Yeah, favorite hero of all time. She's my favorite superhero. I will say I am the biggest Spider-Girl fan ever. I don't think there's a competition. So I was part of Spider-Girl boards. There was forums about Spider-Girl. I was there. So I love Spider-Girl. She's my girl. And that's why my friends know they have to go see this movie because they know how much I love Spider-Girl. But she's the daughter of Spider-Man, and something I've always really enjoyed about her character a lot is that she's the only Spider-Person who never went through trauma to become a Spider-Person. Like, her mom and dad are alive. She just became a Spider-Person because she knew that's what was right to do. She had these powers. Cool. She needed responsibility, but no one needed to die for her to learn that. She just had good parents. And now we get to see baby May in the movies. Peter of the Spiderverse universe has a kid, and that's May. And that's the character. She's the daughter of Spider-Man. That's kind of all you need to know about that. Mayday, yeah.
So her name is May, but her hero name is Mayday.
No, just her nickname. Her hero name is Spider-Girl. Like, her nickname in school is Mayday. Like, that's just her name.
Got you. Okay, cool.
Because I was gonna be like, did they name her Mayday, and why would they do that?
It's her May because of Aunt May.
Yes, got it.
And there's actually different versions of May if we wanted to go to 302, I would tell you about those stories, but there's actually alternate universes May as well. But we don't have to touch that if you don't want to. We can move.
What's her? Does she have a crazy alternate universe where she's like a heavy metal rocker or something?
I was going to say, is her name Moon?
Let me no, but her clone is named April, and I'm not.
Oh my god!
Oh, we didn't even talk about Ben Reilly. Oh my god, how did we not do this?
Oh my god, we not do this?
Kat,
I cannot believe it. This class just auditing the syllabus was completely ineffective. I have no idea.
Ben Reilly is Spider-Man's clone.
Who?
What?
Ben Reilly is Spider-Man's clone.
Wait, who? Why did they clone him?
Is his name Ben for a reason that seems significant?
Yeah, like Uncle Ben.
Like
yes,
and then
he dies.
Uncle Ben died.
So did Ben Reilly for a while. So Ben Reilly
and Thomas Wayne.
I know, crazy. Not the Wayne. So what's crazy about Ben Reilly is a really controversial character because in 1990s, they had an arc called the Clone Saga. And you found out that Peter Parker, you've been following since the 60s, was never the real Peter Parker. He was cloned. And he was never the real guy.
What?
Yeah, he was never the real Peter Parker. Peter Parker was a clone this whole entire time, and Ben Reilly was the real Peter Parker. But then audience members hated that, so they switched it up and said, actually, Ben Reilly's the clone. Don't worry. Don't worry. Ben Reilly's a clone, not Peter Parker. But people hated it. It was one of the most controversial stories of Spider-Man. Yeah, so Ben Reilly, people love him now, though. He's a fan favorite. What? I don't know why. Yeah, people love Ben Reilly.
When did people turn on Ben Reilly and we're just like, you know what?
My notes are just on happy him. Face, sad face, question marks.
Mayday, Super Spider Girl.
The reason
Ben Reilly. Do we know what he is? Cross it out.
He's a clone. He is a clone. The reason people hated him because there was a whole year where people thought Peter Parker wasn't the real Peter Parker.
Is that like the thing where they thought Captain America was secretly a Nazi and that? Everybody's
boat. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes and no. I don't know if it's the same thing, but sure. If you want to use that as an analogy, we can.
Okay.
The reason I mentioned Ben Reilly is because, again, Mayday had a clone because they wanted to do this similar thing where, like, who was the real May? Is it April or is it May? Because the writer of the Clone Saga is also the creator of Spider-Girl, who is one of my favorite writers of all time, and love Tom DeFalco. But yes, so Ben Reilly is a very important character. He's a clone. He will show up in the Spider-Verse. We've already seen him in trailers as well. He's a fan favorite because it's the 90s. People like to be nostalgic. Yes. I'm trying to think. Okay, Spider-Girl. I will tell you a little bit about the different versions of Spider-Girl because you asked. Spider-Girl, there's a version of her that I won't talk about because she's not as important. But the reason Spider-Girl kind of exists, she showed up as a what if issue. What if is a comic book where Marvel explores ideas that is like, hey, what if that happened? And then
they have the animated show on Disney Plus as well.
Exactly. And the Clone Saga, we got to mention this. Mary Jane lost her child. She had a miscarriage, and that was like a big deal, obviously. And that was May. So the what if issue is like, how about if Mary Jane and Peter had their kid? And they're like, wow, we really like this story. Let's actually do a whole alternate universe with them. And then one more day, we mentioned it before, where Mary Jane and Peter's marriage was totally broken up. we got to see that kid again, and her name was Annie Mae because Mary Jane's aunt is called Annie. That's Aunt Annie. And then obviously we see that Peter's aunt is Aunt May. So they combine the names. So you're like, that's a version of May. It's like, oh, you know, I could be alive if you don't trade the marriage. And then Peter's like, I got to save Aunt May. So she's not alive.
Peter's like, you know what? I'll pass. Like, I don't know about fatherhood right now.
That's very much
my child.
That's very much Nora Allen saying, you could save me, but Barry's like, nah, man, I gotta save my mom. Wait, that's exactly his name is Nora Allen. Don't they have? But they have a baby Nora as well.
Yeah, little
Universal
Nora.
Yeah, universes
it's
are
the
confusing.
same idea. Yeah,
same idea for sure. So
yes,
the reason I mentioned this is because Annie Mae has red hair, right? Annie Mae had red hair. May has black hair. She kind of has her father's hair.
Twist.
So, and later in years later, they made a mini series where we now see, because Mary Jane and Peter are still not together. They're like, how about if they were? And they were like, oh, they have a daughter, and her name's Annie Mae. Even though Mayday exists, they're like, let's make her a little younger. Let's make her the daughter. So there's technically two versions. They don't call her anime, but that would be fun. Rachel.
That's a great question from Rachel. Do they call her anime?
They do have two versions of May because of that. And the version in the movie, they call her May, but she does have red hair. So that's why I mentioned it's like, oh, maybe they're gonna combine both of them because she has red hair in the comics. So anyways, that is the different versions of Spider-Girl. There's also a character named Arana. And she's also a Spider-Girl, not related to Mayday though. Just letting you know, there's multiple Spider-Girls.
Okay.
I know.
What?
Yeah.
Let's move to the villains.
I know we keep going back to the villains. We did pretty much.
I gotta get like the core stuff down so that I can make note cards. I gotta have the top level so that I can start drawing my lines. That's how my
Let me see. Oh, Craven. Okay, I did forget about Craven and Lizard.
Well, so I have
Mysterio.
specific questions.
Okay.
So how does Green Goblin, what is his villainous intent? Like, what is his main goal?
Killing
Spider-Man?
people. Yeah, just being like, against Spider-Man.
He's just a good old classic villain. What are his powers?
He doesn't have any. He
skateboards?
just has a glider. Yeah, he has a glider. Yeah, he's more tech
got these
guy.
little pumpkins that he throws.
Yeah, he has the pumpkins he throws.
I know
That's
about
pretty
the
much what he
pumpkins.
does.
Okay,
Yeah.
so villains are villains for villainous reasons. Okay, let's go to the what. We did the who's. The what's. I know you explained that they have web cartridges and that they can shoot those web cartridges. That's really fun to be able to do on a webcam that we're recording on right now. So besides that, what are their other powers? And why does Tobey Maguire have it in him?
I can't answer the last one. That was creative. That was just a creative endeavor. They thought, why not?
Like, what did the spider give them? And then why did he decide, yo, let me make web cartridges?
I also can't answer the why. I think he was just like, Stan Lee's like, this would be fun. And he's like a scientist. He's smart. Peter is a really smart guy. So he used his science side of things to make it. But the powers, he has super strength. He has agility. I wouldn't really call it super speed. He could crawl up walls. So his hands are sticky and they crawl up things.
So his hands are sticky, but he had to make web cartridges.
Yeah,
because he wants to swing through the sky. He needs to swing.
Gotcha. Okay.
The web cartridges is often where I forget that is the case.
Artificial.
Because he can do all these other spider things, but for some reason the web thing is not native to him, which doesn't it doesn't
just seems
make
so much
a lot
part
of
him.
Sense to me. As
that's why Tobey Maguire did that. That's why Tobey's like, why not just have it organically?
Yeah, exactly.
But most people are like, oh, that's disgusting. That's coming out of him.
Agility. He's strong. He's got sticky hands.
Yeah, he has a spider sense, so that's it alerts him of danger.
Pam wants your notes after this. We should post up. We should post up a something of her notes after to the Patreon
like that.
after the episode.
I like that. Yeah, dude, follow our Patreon if you want to see the notes. Meet the Pam also says, I knew this was not going to be a regular Cats history episode, but I love this. I thought I had a fair amount of knowledge of Spiderverse, but nope.
This is the one history lessons with Professor Cat where you might actually learn something.
You're gonna learn something about Spider-Man.
Unless you have an essay question about prohibition in America, in which case
and then
help you ace it.
Yeah. Cat's got you covered. Don't worry about it.
I definitely got you covered. But yeah, the spider sense is a really big thing because not everyone knows about the secret power where he gets this like tingle in his brain and he's like, something's behind me. And he's like, what's that? And that's the spider sense. But as I mentioned, other spider heroes have different powers sometimes. So like Spider-Woman has like this radioactive power. Miles has like a stinging power, like this electricity power that he could use. Mayday can retract, so when she's on a wall, she could also like repel against the wall and use her powers that way. Gwen has the use of the venom, so she could like get clothes and not have to go get laundry done because she could like rechange her clothes with the venom symbiote. Yeah,
that's the best power of all.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. Let me think if there's any.
That's why she's always the best dressed one. Gwen is a fashion icon.
Which, by the way, I was totally looking up pictures of her online. Yeah, and you cannot tell me that these don't look like ballet slippers. Like they
are sneakers in the comics, though. If you look at the
movie,
they're
sneakers,
they look like
yeah. Okay, I guess more of these have sneakers than not. But a lot of the art I see, like this is now granted that this is not.
But because of the movie version uses ballet slippers.
Yeah.
And I think they're just utilizing that as a reference.
Oops.
Oh, no, not me.
Yeah.
You don't want to see me. For the listeners, we just expanded our window on the video. And that is what just happened.
Not me. Okay,
not
so
me.
Agility, sticky hands, strong, Spidey tingles. Miles can sting people. Spider-Gwen can use venom. She has venom bunnies. Yeah. Mayday is capable of doing
repelling. What? Like repelling. Yeah, so like you could be on a wall, you're repelling against it, and like that's her power.
So it's like a wall trampoline.
Yeah.
Okay.
She also knows how to play basketball, if that helps. And I don't know if that's a superpower. But she's really good at basketball. Yeah, exactly. It's my superpower.
That is honestly one of my fondest memories of that whole trip, and bearing in mind that Morgan got married during that trip. But I absolutely loved going and doing basketball in Kat's backyard, like quote backyard, like in your like Staten Island backyard, because I was expecting like the Bronx, and I was like expecting like downtown, like bunch of buildings everywhere, and I'm like, this is a literal ass park. And Kat's like, yeah, I live on Staten Island.
it's a suburban area.
That's my favorite, is that like you expect it to be like on the mean streets playing b-ball.
That's exactly what I thought. I was like, this is like New
park.
Amsterdam scenes. Like, no.
I don't even think anyone was like playing basketball while we were playing basketball. So it was like, it wasn't even crowded.
Parks are usually pretty clear.
It was pretty terrible. Okay.
We were pretty good.
So let's start wrapping up the 101. So we have learned the
got to 202.
The what's. Ready. What powers do they have? The where's the main, like with a bunch of universes, but it mainly takes place where?
New York City.
New York. Okay.
Yeah.
What time period? Is it supposed to be modern day? Like it's at whatever
it's
time
modern,
period?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, modern day.
And now the big question, Kat. Why?
Why?
Why Spider-Man?
You know what? I'm going to answer a bigger question. I think why do people relate to Spider-Man? Because I think there's always...
I love it.
That's
exactly what I meant.
Totally.
Yeah, it was that beautiful question. A lot of people say they relate to Spider-Man because he was a geek, right? He was the geek who got superpowers. But I don't really think that's the reason we relate to him. I think it's the idea that we actually get to see the double life a little bit more. We get to see him have troubles. He can't pay the bills, and he has to kind of deal with that. And I think I love the theme of Spider-Man. Like I said, I enjoy the idea that he's always wants to do the best he can. Even if the circumstances are horrible, he's like, there's a building falling on my back, but I'm still going to get through this, and I'm still going to, save the day. And I think that's why people like Peter Parker so much. It's more of his attitude. more than anything. And obviously he has good villains. I mean, if you ask like about Batman, why did Batman stand the test of time? It's like he has good villains. If Spider-Man didn't have Green Goblin, maybe we wouldn't be talking about Spider-Man anymore. But yeah, I think it's just because he's relatable, but not relatable in the way you think. I really think people are like, well, it's because he married a supermodel and because that's what we want. I was like, nah, I really think it's just because you could relate to his everyday life. And that's what I like about Spider-Man. I just like how much he tries to triumph every day, even if, sometimes he's down on his luck. He's gonna try again, even if he's gonna probably get back down on his luck.
What's interesting about that is that that the way you just described that from what we know of you and things you like to write and the stories you enjoy reading, it makes so much sense why Spider-Man is so impactful for you and why you enjoy that character so much, because you like that real life, like life is real life. Morgan and I are like, let's talk about a wheel in time. And
you're a dragon?
Let's talk about fantasy.
Could there be a dragon?
There definitely could be a dragon.
Space travel? Like but I love, Kat, that strikes me as like you go back and you look at the history 101 of Kat, and it's very clear how much Spider-Man has influenced your own writing. Like Father Like Daughter definitely has some of that not Spider-Gwen, Mayday stuff like feeling in there. Oh, for
sure.
Like I can and even for a second, the Spider-Gwen, I was like, does she have ballet slippers? Is that why they call her the dancer?
Right? I wish I connected in that. I think Spider-Gwen did come out after the dancer, which is so crazy. But no, I'm so influenced by Spider-Man and everything I've read by him, and I think he's just such a fascinating character. But also, it's interesting to read a character that's owned by a company, right? Like I get to write characters that I love, and I get to do anything I want. But it's as much as it's frustrating to talk about Spider-Man being like, oh, he's not with Mary Jane and they did this thing, and it's like, oh, I've seen this before. It's kind of fun to talk about that too, because like he's also a character that's lasts so long, and you're like, oh, like what can you do next with him? How is he going to reflect on society? And like I said, I think his villains are interesting too, and I love that you could kind of like track back to some of his biggest stories, and that still affects people. I didn't get to talk about Kraven, but Kraven's a huge villain of Spider-Man's as well. I won't go too far into it, but
I was gonna say, what's Kraven's deal?
Kraven's deal is that he wants to hunch Spider-Man. He wants to kill Spider-Man, which all these people do. Yeah. But in the long run, it becomes this really, really dark story about like, is Spider-Man gonna die? I believe he was married with Mary Jane at the time. So we get to see a little bit of that. And it's this really gritty story between it's a versus match between Kraven and Spider-Man. It gets bloody. And that was like the first time where we got to really see a really dark story with Spider-Man. It came out actually before Dark Knight Returns, which is known as like, when comics changed. But, I think this was like the stepping stone of like where comics changed. And people say, and I think this is fascinating too, the Silver Age of comics is always like this bright side of comics where it's this, everyone's happy. Here's these X-ray vision glasses. But when Gwen Stacy died, people say that's when, we kind of turned into modern comics because like, oh, wait. Comics are getting serious now. Like things like that can happen where, Gwen's not coming back, she's dead. So it's interesting to see like the turning points in Spider-Man. And even, the stories that we don't like, the One More Days, which I talked about, Mary Jane and Peter's marriage breaking up. It's a story we still talk about. Even if it's infamous, it's still something that impacted people. So I think that's, interesting as well. But I love Spider-Man. I'm very curious to see what they're going to end up doing with this movie, because I think that's what I love about this movie and why maybe I talk about and I like the MCU just fine enough, but I don't get excited for the MCU because it's not really a comic movie. It is an action movie that so happens to have Iron Man in it. I really truly believe Into the Spider-Verse is my favorite movie of all time because it felt like I was finally seeing what I love, comics on the big screen. And that's why with Across the Spider-Verse, I'm so excited because I want to see like this story continue. That was just the start. Like, where does it go from here? And having my favorite character of all time, who would have thought Mayday would be on screens? Like when I was reading that character, I'm like, my mom would always say like, you should be a writer because you get to write Mayday one day. I was like, yeah, no, that'd be cool. But Mayday's not getting a movie. So just to see where superhero movies have gone and then you get to see this most minor character like on the screen, it's so exciting.
That's so cool. And Into the Spider-Verse was such a good movie too. Like even as a person who doesn't read a lot of Spider-Man comics or barely any at all, I went into that movie and I came out of it and I was like, that was phenomenal. The animation is beautiful. The story is really good. And it's very, I think, accessible, whether or not you are a Spider-Man like super fan like Kat, or like more like Amy and I taking notes desperately going, who is Craven? I think you can go into the Spiderverse and like really come out with like a pretty good understanding of those characters.
And it's about people. I think that's what's so important about that Spider-Man movie. When you walk out of the MCU movie, sometimes like it's so bombastic. It's like what you guys talk about with fantasy. It's like it's so fantastical that sometimes you forget, like, oh well, what was the character arc there? Like, what was the character going through? I think with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, you always knew what Miles was going through, and there was just this really awesome underlining, and it seems like it's going to continue in the second movie of like, do I really need to go through trauma to be a good hero? And that's the basis of Spider-Man, and that's why, again, why I like Spider-Girl so much, is like she didn't have to go through trauma to be a hero, and I think that's a very interesting concept as well. And it just was so, I like the twists and turns. There was obviously a plot. Again, his uncle dies, and you get to see the twists and turns of that. But it was always about Miles. It was always about his character journey of how to be a better hero. And I think sometimes these action movies forget that. They want to have, Michael Keaton show up in a movie, or like the universe has to explode. And it's just like, sure, we're having all these spider people come into one universe, but it seems like it's going to still be about the character. It's going to be about this individual's journey about trying to be a better hero.
I love this idea of, you're talking about like, do you need trauma to be a hero? Like that in and of itself, can we make that a whole new episode? Like I would love that.
That is a really cool question. And I do agree. I think so many of our heroes are like really motivated by some big trauma. And it is kind of refreshing to get a couple of, like, every now and then you get one that's just like, no, I just got these powers and like helping people.
I want to be a good, and you know what that reminds me
of? My Uncle Ben never died.
Yeah, right?
It's kind of got a Wonder Woman aspect to it. Not necessarily Superman, but like, definitely not Superman. He lost his whole planet.
He lost quite a few people.
Yeah, but like the Wonder Woman, the Patty Jenkins Wonder Woman, like she literally is just like, I'm gonna do good for the sake of doing good. And I feel like that's a lot of things that like that, to me, I relate to that a lot. Like, I just want to do good. I just want to help people. That's just what I want to do. And so I like having characters like this. And now I'm really inspired to want to go read the Spider-Gwen. So here's the final questions.
Right. Ooh, okay.
Where do, like, let's say I want to pick up Spider-Gwen. Where do I start? I want to pick up
these are dangerous questions.
Yeah, no, these are a little
bit
more
start?
dangerous.
Where do I go to jump into this? But specifically now I'm really into Spider-Gwen, and I'm gonna read.
I think if you really like Spider-Gwen, go to a comic book store and ask them what is the true first volume of Spider-Gwen, because that's really is the hardest part, is because Marvel reboots a lot. So I think with Morgan, you probably read a volume 1, but it wasn't actually a volume 1. It was probably volume 1 of like their second series.
Well, I have the Comixology. App.
You could look at the dates and just see, like, okay, they'll a lot of times look at the order, be like, okay, this is how it came out. But honestly, my biggest recommendation, if you want to get into Spider-Man and you want to get into all these characters, especially Miles, is start with Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1. What's really great about Ultimate Spider-Man, it's very different from Spider-Verse, where they like rebooted so many times. It's really a straightforward series, and you get to learn about Peter. Again, it might not be the 616 Peter, the one I'm talking about, but it's actually a story with a beginning, middle, and end as well. Spider-Man is a character that's lasted 60 years, more than 60 years, 80 years. He's obviously, his narrative ebbs and flows. I gave you so much information, but I didn't even scratch the surface of who Spider-Man is, because there's so much going on, and you really need to be caught up with everything in Spider-Man to understand Spider-Man in this universe. But with Ultimate Spider-Man, it was accessible, right? It was just this guy who was in high school, and you get to tell the story through there, and that's where Miles comes from, so you could read that story as well. I think that's a good spot to start. I always recommend Ultimate Spider-Man, because it really is so hard. To end it, you guys want to know where Spider-Man's at this second? I was telling my friends about it, and they're like, what?
New York.
He is in New York. But right now, what's going on is that they relaunch Spider-Man a lot. So they made a new series, and last series, Mary Jane and Peter were together. They weren't married. They remember they were married, but they were together. And now this volume, they're like, we can't have them together, because there is something in editorial with Spider-Man. We don't know exactly why they don't want them together, but they don't want them together. Some people think it's because they think that if Peter is single, he's more relatable. I think this is the more reasonable answer, is that every single time they break up Spider-Man and Mary Jane, their sales go up. Every single time they come back together, their sales go up. So it's a way to peak sales.
They just want to keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a great, like, what else can you do to make, this is a guarantee for your sales to go up. So why wouldn't you do it? Yeah, so why not do it? Like, what else can you do with Spider-Man to peak sales? They can't get married. I mean, they get married again, right? And then they can break up, and that's kind of how you do it. So in this arc, they were together, but Mary Jane's thrown into another universe with this guy named Paul. He's just Paul. He's a nobody. His name's Paul. And she ends up being stuck there for 4 years and ends up falling in love with Paul. And they adopt children. Yeah, Paul. And they end up adopting children. And Peter's down on his luck. He can't get with Mary Jane now. She's in love with Paul. Now she has superpowers. She has superpowers as well. And it's the power of jackpot. So she like can do what's those things
slot machine.
And she gets powers with the slot machine. So if you get really lucky, you get good powers. If you get really not lucky, you get bad powers. And that's what's going on.
What powers did she get? Is
she could become a god? She could throw cotton candy at people if it's bad. It's interesting.
Wait, does she just carry around a little slot machine? Go like, what's up?
It's like more of like it's like a electronic slot machine, like shows up and you're like.
But it just shows up like when she wants to have.
She get like Candy Crush ads in it or something? Like
maybe.
Could you imagine? She's like about to find out what power she has, and they're like, "Download Farmville."
Yeah, she's like, "Oh man, okay, I gotta get the heater going so that this woman and the girl can survive in the winter."
You know, I kind of would like that for her powers. But what's really bad, so we thought the issue that came out this week actually came out yesterday. This is all the information we got about Mary Jane. And we're like, they say this is going to be the biggest Spider-Man story since the death of Gwen Stacy. And the writer can't go to Comic-Con because that's how bad it's going to be. People are going to hate this story. So next issue, they're really implying that Mary Jane's going to die. But we're like, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the big thing. So
is Paul
at the end of the month. Paul might kill her. Paul might do that. I don't know who's going to end up killing her.
It's always the husband.
Boo.
Paul,
boo.
No, Paul. Yeah, so that's what's going on in Spider-Man right now. No one's happy. That
doesn't sound great.
So just to end the class, teacher, Professor Cat, if you had to pick live action, if you had to pick the best live action representation of Spider-Man, in your opinion, you don't need to necessarily defend it, but in your opinion, the best and the worst, who would it be?
The worst would probably be the Amazing Spider-Man 2, like that movie. I think Andrew Garfield did. Andrew Garfield, the Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, so Amazing Spider-Man is Andrew Garfield's movies.
Gotcha.
The second volume. And the second movie, I actually was an extra in that second movie.
What?
Hold on.
Yeah.
And you didn't even like it?
Story?
No, I hated it. Yeah, I was an extra. So I was in college and I saw an ad to be an extra for Spider-Man. I was like, yeah, I want to be an extra. And we got in and we're in the graduation scene. The amount of times we had to rehear that monologue. But yeah, we're on set with Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, and we're on that set for like 2 or 3 days, and I was extra in that movie.
Whoa!
Why is this not plastered on your wall?
Can you see you in the background? Like, are you?
That is why it's not plastered on the wall. You can't see me in the background. I don't know. Maybe if you look back, you can. I just didn't notice. But I remember seeing that movie because I was like, I want to see myself on screen. And my friend Luke, he actually bumped into Emma Stone. That was his big moment during the movie. And we might have seen him for a second. But yeah, we were extras for that. But that's my least favorite movie, even though if I'm in it. And that's always my joke. I'm like, oh, that's my least favorite Spider-Man movie. Even though I
one that you're in.
Part. Yeah.
Okay. And then who's your favorite?
My favorite. I would say Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire. There's a really cool scene, and I was actually literally talking about it today with my brother, where I hope you know the scene, the train scene, where he stops the train and his mask ends up falling off, and everyone on the train's like, wait, you're so young. And he's like, we won't tell anybody. It's so interesting. Like 10 years later, you wouldn't even be able to do a scene like that because obviously someone would have had a phone and someone would have.
Mhm.
And I love that scene.
Right.
Yeah. So and I love a good identity reveal. It's that's my favorite trope of all time. So I have like these strangers find out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And also there's some good moments. Mary Jane is good in that movie. It's a really solid movie. And I believe, that's the Dr. Octopus movie. So I really like it.
Yeah, I feel like at the time when Spider-Man 2 came out, people were like, can superhero movies be good?
Yeah.
So I do feel like in a big way, Spider-Man 2 was kind of like a genre definer for superhero movies and really kind of showed people what a very good superhero movie. Not saying Spider-Man 1 wasn't good or any of the X-Men movies.
But that was Spider-Man 2 was like
Spider-Man 2. That's a good movie. Yeah, they did a great job with that one.
Yeah. Okay. So the last question, just because I'm curious, so I have not seen a lot of these. I have thoroughly enjoyed watching the Tom Holland films.
Right.
I'm curious, how do you think, because it seems to me that's that's a genuinely high school Spider-Man versus a college Spider-Man.
I like Tom Holland a lot. And I think he's a good actor, and I think his attitude is very Spider-Man, but the events he goes through is not very Spider-Man. Like the plot is very MCU. Let's do, get the thing and do that and interact with Doctor Strange, which Spider-Man doesn't tend to do very often. And it's very high school, which is fine. I like it for the movies. Like I like him, I like Zendaya, but like I said about Into the Spider-Verse, when I watch Into the Spider-Verse, I'm like, this is my Spider-Man, this is the comic. MCU is like, this is a good movie, I'm enjoying it. They're using superheroes as a vehicle to tell these stories, but I wouldn't call it a comic movie.
Okay, I really like that. Okay, Morgan, any last minute questions for Professor Cat?
We do have a last minute question that was emailed in. I'm going to pull it up now. This is from Rebecca Johnson, co-host of Supergirl Radio and a Spidey fan. Rebecca says, hi, legendary ladies. Dr. Sebastian Ectoveri, which I probably maybe mispronounced, who is a spider scientist and goes by the username @SpiderDayNight on Twitter, makes the case that Spider-Man's abilities are more akin to jumping spiders than any other kind of spider. So Rebecca says, it makes me wonder, does Spider-Man hang out with actual spiders? Does he have them as pets? And if he did, would his pet be a jumping spider or another kind of spider? Then she wants to know, is there a Marvel team of actual insect pets? And if there isn't, why not? Because that's a great idea.
Ectopets.
So
she goes on to say, pets. Oh, sorry. She goes on to say, I'm not a bug person, but I do think jumping spiders are kind of cute. If you haven't seen it, check out the animated shorts about Lucas the jumping spider. I would never pick one up, but I can appreciate an adorable animated character.
I know exactly the one she's talking about.
It's really cute. It's like the eyes are so big.
The big eyes. He's like, oh, they're scared of me, but I'm a good guy.
I have not seen the jumping spider. I'll have to bookmark it. I will definitely bookmark it. But he's never had a spider pet of that I know of. But Spider-Gwen, the Venom, for some reason, I can't explain the power. There's like a lot of little spiders that come out of the Venom. So like she has a lot of spider pets because it's kind of part of her power. So that's kind of cool. And is there spider insect team? No, but there's a Pet Avengers. There's pets.
Okay. Yeah, Pet Avengers is great. Now,
there's no spider though.
Well, if the study of bugs is entomology, then that would be an entiteam.
I think some people would. I don't know how well that would do in sales, but I love the spunk.
Now, Kat, she does also ask, if Spider-Man did have a pet spider, do you think it would be a jumping spider or another kind of spider? Like, what kind of spider pet would he have?
I think it would be like a tarantula, because that's the one that most people are like, oh yeah, that's like a spider type thing. I feel like it'd be that, because that's like the most known, right? I don't even know if that is that a spider? Is that
Oh yeah, it's definitely
to a spider?
It's definitely a spider.
I think that's what he would have, because I feel like that's the one that most people know. Unless there's a writer who's like, loves spiders, they might do the jumping spider.
Now, Rachel in chat asks, isn't there a Spider-Man who is made of spiders? A true Spider-Man.
I know he has. There is one that's made of like to look like one spider. He's not very popular. And again, the one made out of spiders, I would say, is Spider-Gwen. Like her powers are related to it. See, isn't it so fun when I know things?
I've learned so much.
I'm going to be honest. I did not listen for the last 2 minutes because I was watching the Lucas the Spider shorts.
He's very cute. His eyes are
There's
so
a
big.
whole series. Oh my gosh, it's precious.
They're very cute. Yeah, she
very cute.
She mentioned this to me the last time we were recording. She was like, "Oh, you know the cute jumping spider," and I was like, "No such thing." And she
is this like a new thing? Is it like a new series?
It's like a short, but then it has now a YouTube series.
Okay, so that's why people are
if you
talking
just
about it.
Search Lucas jumping spider, it'll pop right up, and you
gotta check him out.
It's a kids show, like it's meant for kids.
Oh, okay, so it's okay, that's interesting.
Okay, so I think that's gonna wrap up class.
Yeah.
I think just for shits and giggles, Kat should give us a pop quiz.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
This is a good question. Okay, so Morgan,
give like 3 questions.
Okay, I'm ready. I did not make detailed notes like Amy, so I'm at a disadvantage. I just held the pen.
Open book.
What? This is for both of you guys, so whoever answers it first.
Sure.
What arc was Ben Reilly introduced in?
Oh, the Clone Saga.
Yeah, there you go. Clone
Yeah,
Saga.
the notes helped for sure.
What? I did mention this. I don't know if you wrote a note about this. What is Spider-Gwen's band called?
The Mary Janes.
MJs.
Okay. The Mary
Janes.
Yeah, the Mary Janes.
So I think mine was more correct, Amy.
That is
number 3. What is the name of the Spider-Girl character in the One More Day version of the book?
April.
No, that was her clone.
No.
The Spider-Gwen version?
Anime?
Yes, Anime. There you go.
Oh, that's right. That
There
was
we
Rachel
go.
was making a joke about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, those are the questions. You guys did pretty well.
Wow. Yay.
And those are really pop quiz.
You guys don't really like my representation of the Venom symbiote.
Wow.
It's just me.
It's
That's
beautiful.
me and that's Venom. He's just on my shoulder.
I like it.
I'm definitely going to put these on the Patreon. So if anyone,
you should.
If anyone would like to join our Patreon, you could see my notes at the very top. It says "Cat is famous?" ?
Maybe. I don't know if it's because I'm an extra on Amazing Spider-Man.
That's definitely.
Yeah,
why.
definitely. Were you gonna ask something, Morgan? Oh, go on.
Oh no, I was just laughing that like the second there was a pop quiz in the offing, like Amy and I, the A students, were suddenly like, no, we gotta win. Suddenly we were in it to win it.
You guys did pretty well.
Is the same Peter that falls in love with MJ, is that the same Peter that lost Gwen Stacy?
Yeah, all the same.
Okay, so Gwen Stacy was the first love interest that he couldn't save. Well, that explains a little bit of the theme of why he never gets with MJ. Like, what if he falls in love with her and she dies? Like, what if there's this deep internal trauma to this?
I think the big issue of that is that they were married for like 10 to 15 years in the comics, and they were perfectly fine. He's like it depends on who.
Wait, hold on, they were perfectly fine. They traded their marriage for the universe.
No, they traded their marriage for Aunt May. That's even worse. Oh, okay. Another thing I will say is that everyone knew who Spider-Man was. In this arc, like, he revealed his secret identity, and that's why Aunt May was dying. Was because she got, like, shocked because everyone knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man. So they're like, can we reverse that, please? And they're like, all right, but you got to trade your marriage. And I don't know why they said yes, but they did.
They were like,
I guess
yeah,
they weren't
seems
finding
like a
their
good
marriage.
deal.
So I think
they were happy. They weren't like that happy though.
All right, I think that's going to wrap up our Spider-Man 101 talk. We do have some feedback that we want to read from our last episode. So those of you who joined us for the last episode, you know that we did a pilot pod for Warrior Nun, and we got a lot of really, really cool feedback. Morgan has picked a couple of the comments to read. Very excited. Like, honestly, one of the coolest fan interactions we've had since Legends was getting these messages about Warrior Nun, because I gotta tell you, the Warrior Nun fans are the most eloquent, grammatically correct fans I've ever met, and they're so polite.
They're like,
thank you so much for listening and watching.
May I tell you the good word of Warrior Nun?
Exactly.
And I'm like,
you
sure.
have time to hear about our Lord and Savior?
Yeah, exactly. Warrior
Like,
Nun. They're just knocking on the door very politely.
So polite. Like, I absolutely, like, I love this fandom. Like, that on it, they are inspiring me to watch episode 2, which I think.
Oh, Amy,
I think I'm gonna do.
You know that right before this podcast, I actually watched
Did you really?
2? I did. I was
How
like,
was it?
I've been meaning to watch episode 2, and I've been so sick. I knew I couldn't concentrate on it.
Yeah.
It's good. I liked it. It was it really kind of built on episode 1. I felt less confused. Like I did not get the answers to a lot of my questions, but I felt less like in the wilds like I did in the first episode.
They did a better 101.
You have hope.
I do. I have hope. I'm probably gonna plow through the first season. It's only 10 episodes, so not a big commitment.
Okay.
All right.
I'm loving this. Okay.
Nice. Yeah, so we got a bunch of tweets and we got a bunch of comments on our YouTube. So just for expediency, I'm just going to read some of the YouTube comments. This one I thought was really interesting. So they're responding to us talking about how the show was probably pretty expensive because it filmed on location in Spain at non-WTH or NOHWTH on YouTube said, the showrunner has been quoted as saying that the show wasn't really expensive. It was one of the reasons he was surprised it was canceled. And somebody else on Twitter also, I think, responded to me, and I have to apologize because I don't remember the username, but they mentioned that it was actually a co-production with Netflix. So like basically Netflix wasn't even footing the whole bill, which is interesting. So yeah, I guess they can't quite say, oh, sorry, it was too expensive, because it sounds like they got a lot of money. It was a co-production, so it wasn't actually all that expensive. Pambola on YouTube said, thanks for doing this. Firstly, these are definitely not your normal nuns. These nuns fight evil and kick ass. Secondly, the world building and seeing the journey that Ava is on, albeit a little slow at times, will make sense and is so worth it once it starts rolling. There will be answers to most of your questions, but may lead to more. Please stick with it. The mythology, lore, religious combo mixed with interesting characters and their development and epic fight scenes, topped off with a beautifully done slow burn, is incredible. Also interesting, symbolism scattered about, and the cinematography is chef's kiss. The writers and directors took a great care in bringing to life characters that many of us grew to love. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed the ride. Somebody else said, this is my favorite show. It gets better and better. Trust me. At Blood Manor 8 said, thank you for watching the pilot of Warrior Nun. It's interesting hearing viewpoints just from watching the first episode. Season 2 definitely found its footing, but don't even get me started on all the ways Netflix sabotaged the show, including zero promotion money and no journalist packages. To answer your question about Spain, it was actually cheaper to film there because the majority of season 1 was filmed in Andalusia, and Spain has a tax incentive for filming in the country. Also, season 1 isn't as sapphic, but season 2 very much is. Hope you at least give episode 2 a chance. And then Tech Girl said, my favorite thing about the show is the kindness between all the sisters, and of course, Ava Treese. They are really cool. And then Inspector HG said, thanks for showcasing Warrior Nun. Yes, it's a lovely slow burn with amazing writing, action, and cinematography. The show means so much to so many people for so many different reasons. We hope you continue to give it a chance. #save Warrior Nun. And then somebody else mentioned, thank you for taking your time and watching Warrior Nun, said Tamara P. P.S. Half of the fandom is jealous right now because you share a birthday with Warrior Nun. And was that me that like
I'm
Warrior Nun?
I'm happy that we
so.
reached half the fandom.
I know. I was like, I think it came out on July 2nd. So I feel like that was me that shares a birthday with Warrior Nun. And I feel very #blessed.
As you should.
All right. So I think that's going to wrap up our episode. Let's go ahead and go around and let everybody know what we have going on. First off, you can find us on all your different podcast formats. The Legendary Ladies on Stitcher, on iTunes. You can find us on YouTube. Follow us on YouTube. We're starting to do more shorts. You can find us on Instagram at The Legendary Ladies. Right now, our Twitter is still legends_podcast, but stay tuned. It will probably stay the same. But I know that our Twitter things is changing. But Elon Musk is leaving Twitter, so who knows? Maybe we'll be happy with Twitter now.
Something's happening on Twitter.
We'll get our blue check mark back.
Maybe.
I don't
That's
think we
big
ever had
maybe.
it. Maybe.
No, I did though, so that would be
You
nice.
did.
Cat had it.
Yeah,
Cat was
like hers back.
Cat was a VIP for a while.
You can email us, thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. If you have Spider-Man questions, if you have different opinions about Spider-Gwen, what was your first Spider story? What I don't know, what would be your spidey sense? Do you agree with me that it's weird that they can like the venom is like on your shoulder but not really part of you, like I can take over you? I don't know. Who's your favorite villain? Tell us your spider stories. We love this kind of stuff. Message us and we will read it on the podcast. Review us on iTunes. If you like listening to this, write a review on iTunes or on Podchaser or on Stitcher. Subscribe, all that stuff. Let us know. We will read your review. We love to hear from our fans. And last big thing, you can find us on Patreon. Patreon.com/TheLegendaryLadies. You'll get behind the scenes stuff. You'll get a chance to join us live for the recording like Rachel and Pam were tonight, which was really, really cool. You'll get a chance to see my notebook and my notes that I have, like behind the scenes stuff. Kat likes to post stuff from her comics, and Morgan's always sharing her amazing food and stuff like that she does. So like pizza with Pam. So I know, right? You guys are so cool on the East Coast, whatever. We love hearing from fans. We would love for you to join our Patreon. We also love ideas. So if you join the Patreon and you're like, actually, I really was hoping for this kind of stuff, we'll probably
We actually had one idea from Pam. It says, I would really like to see run the gamut from Sweep Week, Gay Kiss, to plot progression. Now series hinge on promoting romance. I think that's a really interesting idea about how series might promote stuff because of the romance.
I really like that idea that we had too. I'm going to put this in the back pocket of like, do you need trauma to be a hero? Like, I think that's a really interesting conversation. So if you're listening and you have an opinion on that, maybe you have, I know I'm watching a TV show right now where I'm so exceedingly frustrated that a character had to go through something that I feel is completely unnecessary just to give them an arc. And I was like, I'm pretty sure.
What show is this? Now I'm
Chicago PD, which is actually really frustrating me. But there is a moment. I actually did not watch the most recent season of Outlander because I was so frustrated with the trope that they did, where an individual was, trigger warning, sexually assaulted. And that became such a huge part of the story. And I was like, this character has already gone through so much shit. That's what you needed to get this storyline. Come on, you can be better than that. Of course, now I'm going to watch the last season because I want to know what's going on.
You got to know how it ends.
If you guys have ideas, like that kind of stuff, we love these sort of conversations. We also are definitely going to do more one-on-ones. So if you guys have things you'd like to know from Kat or me or Morgan, please send us your one-on-one recommendations.
Class is in session.
Class is now in session. Let's go around the table. Morgan, where can everybody find you online, and what other shows are you up to?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mojotastic. And you can also find me as a co-host on Supergirl Radio, where we're just about done with season 1, rewinding back to season 1 of Supergirl. And just in time for the Flash movie, aka the greatest movie of all time that was or ever will be, to come out, and Supergirl is in that, which is pretty exciting. So we're hyped. Our expectations are unbelievably high. Tom Cruise said it's amazing. The guy who owns Warner Brothers Discovery said it redefined superhero movies for him, and that guy seems great. So obviously it's a fantastic movie. But we are really actually looking forward to the movie. We just think that the hype has gotten ridiculous. So we will be talking about that pretty soon. It's about a month that comes out. So that should be good times.
Kat, what about you? Where can everybody find you online?
Yeah, at Comic Uno with no verified check mark as of right now, but I'm still at Comic Uno. And also I have a Kickstarter going on. If you enjoy wholesome romance stories, go check out Rainbow Canvas. We have original stories from some of the most popular Webtoon Canvas titles, including our own Webtoon Canvas title, Slice of Life. It's all gay and queer, so go check it out. We're getting even closer to our goal, and we're only 3 days in. We're inching closer to $10,000, which is crazy. We launched Monday, but yeah, we love to meet our goals so we can get this book out to you guys. Hopefully you guys can go support it.
That's so cool. You guys can find me on Instagram and Twitter. I finally decided to just make all of my usernames the same. It's Amy_hip. That's Amy_HYP.
Took about 7 years.
It took a long time. I kept going back and forth, and I didn't want the underscore. I wanted the dot, and eventually the Twitter, the Instagram, someone has Amy.hip, and the Twitter, whatever. I'm now Amy_hip, HYP. I'm cool, like hip. You can also find me performing as Lady Macbeth in San Diego coming up on June 16th through July 1st. It is going to be in an outdoor amphitheater. So if you'd like to join us at 8 p.m. on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, starting mid-June through July in San Diego, you can get information patioplayhouse.com/Macbeth. And
So
that I'm very excited. It's gonna be really, really cool. Although I ruined my voice like trying to do one of this massive wailing scream that Lady Macbeth does, and I think that may have been what triggered me getting sick. I don't think it actually was. I think it just fell at the exact same time.
Just a coincidence, yeah.
Just a coincidence, and now I'm like, I don't know if I want to do it like that anymore. Anywho, thank you all so much for listening to the Legendary Ladies podcast. We really appreciate you. Thank you to Professor Kat.
Hey, thank you for being the class, for allowing me to be a professor.
Thanks to Rachel and Pam for joining us live. Remember, you can join us live if you follow or if you join our Patreon at the $10 level. We really appreciate all of our listeners. Have a wonderful week and stay legendary.